Wow, that's quite too tough act to follow, guys. Top 100. That's really cool. Let me start my timer just to keep with the ceremony because they told me you have 9:46 to 9:56. So I don't want to. I'm academic. I like to speak endlessly. So it's a really great pleasure to be here with you today, Amanda, Gareth, and Andrew. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really pleased to be able to share some of my work with you today, and I'll try to resist hard not to comment on the previous comment we just heard about research and relevance. All right, so let me start by this picture. This is the Manhattan South Ferry subway station flooded with seawater after Hurricane Sandy. These are extreme phenomena that in our world we begin to see more frequently and with higher intensity. The total cost of Hurricane Sandy estimated at $50 billion, whereas the Hurricane Katrina, only a couple of years before, an estimated cost of $110 billion. This is the world in which we live in. This is the world in which our students will live in. And in fact, this is the world in which we will have to run the organizations of the future. Now, the level of growth around the globe in the last decades has been unprecedented. But at the same time, we've been using a lot of natural resources for free. And doing so has put tremendous pressures on the environment. I would like to share with you a temperature map that NASA has constructed, basically showing you over the years how the average temperature across the globe has changed. So obviously, blue means it gets colder, and the yellow versus red is getting warmer and warmer. So let's see the data from 1880 to 2011. Since 2000, in the last decade, we have the highest recorded temperatures around the world. As a result, the extreme phenomena that I described earlier only get more frequent and more intense. And indeed, scientists are telling us that global warming is contributing quite significantly in all these extreme phenomena that we see. And you can imagine that for business, that has huge implications in terms of disrupting supply chains, causing all sorts of problems and costs just around the globe. Sadly, of course, these unprecedented levels of growth did not come only with environmental costs. In fact, they come with huge social costs as well. The recent social phenomena we see, the Occupy Wall Street movement, the Occupy, St. Paul's, I guess, movement here in London, all those things basically indicating that the social cohesion that we see across countries is deteriorating. The social fabric is deteriorating. And again, you can add to this all the phenomena about the Arab Spring, the situation in the Middle East, and so on. So put these two huge pressures together, right? Environmental pressures on the one hand, social pressures on the other hand, but that's exactly the world in which we need to function, in which the large organizations that we claim to educate our students to manage going forward. So the big question that I try to answer in my work is, well, what is the role of business in this new world? What is the role of business, if any, in at least helping us dealing with this kind of huge problems that no one of us or no one institution on their own can solve. Now, this is critical because if you see the prevalence of business since 1980, in this graph, I basically graphed the penetration of business in terms of market shares. And you can see that there has been a tremendous growth, whereas in 1980, the world's top 1,000 firms were only selling, let's say, 30% of the world's GDP. By 2010, and if you update to 2012, it's even more, they sell essentially 75% of the world's GDP. We are talking about organizations like Unilever that through their products can reach 2 billion people a day. Right? So given how massive this environmental and social issues is, in my work I try to understand whether these organizations with this kind of reach and this kind of power essentially can redefine the way we think about the role of business within society. And we have seen a lot of companies. Here, this is the CEO of Unilever, Paul Polman, and here's his quite ambitious sustainable living plan. we have seen these huge corporations, in other words, responding, and some of them more effective than others, but quite being responsive to all these problems. And if you think this is not it is an easy task, let's see the first task that Polman says. It says by 2020, and that's in 7 years' time, we will help more than 1 billion people improve their hygiene habits and bring safe drinking water to another 500 million people. Here we're talking about the potential for businesses to bring that systematic, that transformational change that we perhaps so desperately need at this point. Now, the holy grail, of course, of all this is, well, if I do good, if I am responsible, if I care about the environment, if I care about my employees, if I care about all these social issues, can I also be profitable? Or are we going into a world where these corporations are becoming charities and therefore they die out, essentially, right? Because of competition. Well, some of my work has shown that that's indeed not true. If you take some of the top U.S. corporations over a 20-year horizon, you'll see that the green group, what I would call as sustainable organizations, in fact have significantly outperformed, both in terms of market performance as well as operational performance, the red line in this graph, which is perhaps the more traditional organizations that do not particularly integrate the social and environmental issues into the way they do business, into their daily operations, if you like, or into their strategy more broadly. Now, of course, the next question is, well, if they outperformed, so how are these organizations different? And what is it that they do differently? And how do we understand them? Perhaps how do we teach them to our students, to our MBAs, the future CEOs of these organizations, how to handle and how to build, how to sustain these kind of organizations? Well, here's some of the key findings that I came about with. These organizations that were able to outperform are the ones that have voluntarily integrated these social and environmental issues into their business models. In other words, recycling is no longer just a thing you do for the goodness of your heart or because you like to hug trees, but it is at its core a business proposition. And that's the perception out there is changing in the sense that it is okay for business to solve problems profitably. If that means we're going to get companies like Unilever, Procter & Gamble, and so on, attacking these huge social and environmental issues that we're facing and doing so profitably and actually solving them, then that is totally fine, according to a number of public opinion surveys. Now, this is not the Windows model, right? This is not Bill Gates making money off selling Windows and then setting up the Bill Gates Foundation to donate money. These are business models that have integrated these social issues, that see them as opportunities instead of problems, and therefore start solving these issues profitably. How do they look different? Well, in fact, I would claim in my work that they represent a massively new way of doing business. So I had the chance to go deep down into these organizations to explore how they're different, what is it that they're doing in a way that is sustainable. And in fact, what you do find is that these huge structures are quite distinct. They have different governance mechanisms. They are more accountable. They are more transparent. They are more deeper, more meaningful in the way they engage with their stakeholders, whether we're talking about suppliers, whether we talk about employees, whether we talk about shareholders. Right? At the same time, they become accountable. They decide to open up and be as transparent and continuously report on these environmental, social, and governance issues. And in fact, there's a nice match with the capital markets because the more dedicated investors, the ones that do not exert those short-term pressures that can be so destructive for businesses, are in fact the ones that get attracted to these more sustainable organizations. So I see my watch and I'm going down to my last 30 seconds. And I'm feeling the pressure here, but I think Gareth is looking at me, so... So what I would like to suggest to you, and I think that is the main point of all my work, is that we begin to see and are already seeing a new way of functioning as business. And in a new world, I guess, where social environmental pressures are becoming more and more acute and more sadly, they're worsening. So we have collectively, as a business school and as academia, a huge role to play in the way we educate our MBAs and in the way that we think about these problems becomes more like opportunities as opposed to disasters and inevitable outcomes. So I think there's a lot of potential there. There's a lot of hope if we harness the power of business and its ability to solve problems, to bring them in yet again a new domain, the social environmental issues, and allow them to function the way they know best. Thank you very much.